Alrighty, welcome everyone to our Playing on Mars workshop today. My name is Razan, I'm the Student Recruitment Manager, and before we start, we'll be playing a short video. So we're gonna watch that, and then after that, Professor or Dr. Rafi will be leading the workshop with you. Alrighty.
Thank you, Razan.
No great thing, no beautiful invention happened just like that. It happens when we leave our comfort zone and embrace change, creativity, and out of the ordinary. We live in interesting times. We live in a world that's constantly asking questions, that's constantly changing. In a world where blockchain and robots will be the norm, where 85% of tomorrow's jobs don't exist yet, where being multi-skilled is not just celebrated, but essential. At Dubai Institute of Design and Innovation, we believe that we need to prepare you for the future, to teach you skills that will power your tomorrow. Today, design matters more than ever. But how can design help, you may ask? We combine disciplines so you become well-rounded. From product design, multimedia design, fashion design, strategic design management, it's where you will learn how to merge different design disciplines. Presenting a 4-year Bachelor of Design degree in collaboration with MIT and Parsons' new School of Design. DIDI, not just another design university.
Alrighty, Rafi, floor is all yours. We just want to remind everyone that we have the chat box in case you want to ask anything. And once Rafi is done presenting, that will be interactive, so you can interact. All right, Rafi, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Razan. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So thank you everyone for joining. It's really very exciting with 62 people and counting. And this is the first time we're doing this particular workshop remotely. So let's see how this goes. I'm pretty sure the results will be exciting. And we have 2 hours. It's 2 hours, right, Razan? Basically, during the first hour, thanks. So what we're gonna do is for you to be able to play on Mars or to design for Mars or to think about creating man-made structures on Mars, you need to understand the situation and the conditions about Mars. But you also need to understand why design is important in general when we're talking about aerospace. So the first hour, I will be introducing about designing for space, the conditions on Mars. After which we're gonna launch the challenge, which is playing on Mars. And you will have some time, let's see how much time will be remaining to design some ideas. We are going to upload the ideas online to a Google Slides document, and based on the time, we can discuss about your proposals and conclude it there. So my name is Rafi Chakrayan. I'm an aerospace designer. I'm also an assistant professor in DIDI, teaching the foundation year, and also this year we'll be teaching product design. So after the workshop, if you have any questions or any curiosities, I'll be all ears. So let's start. I'm sure when we talk about aerospace, most of the time you will think about engineers, right? But times are changing, and now more than ever, we are in desperate need for designers to start working in the field of aerospace. Now, if you take a look to these logos, basically, some of you might recognize some of them, like Amazon, Virgin, PayPal. But who knows what Blue Origin or Virgin Galactic or even SpaceX? Any candidates? Anyone there? Except some of my students that are following us today. Come on, don't be shy. Yeah, go Divya, Shreya. Oh, nice.
So Virgin Galactic and SpaceX are all like are all foundations that are based on astronomy. Like SpaceX, Tesla, and PayPal are all founded by Elon Musk, who is
Very good.
who's a billionaire and who's one of the world's most recognized billionaires. So
very good, very good. That's true. So you just said it. Basically, what these companies have in common, Amazon was founded by Jeff Bezos, but he also created a company called Blue Origin, the same for Virgin Galactic. Richard Branson, the head of Virgin, also created Virgin Galactic. And finally, Elon Musk, that started PayPal, that co-founded PayPal and Tesla, he started SpaceX. So what's changing in the industry is, until very recently, the space was dominated by government. However, today, more and more private investors and billionaires like Musk and Bezos are saying, no, we can do it. We have the resources to invest in space, and we want space to become a public domain, and we want more people to go to space, explore, and also use all its resources. So finally, what's happening for the very first time, these people are developing cheap and sustainable methods to access space. And suddenly, in the next decade, more and more people will be able to access space for very much cheaper than what it has all been until now. So the reason for that is, we can see it in this example. I'm sure many of you have seen rocket launches, yeah? I mean, rocket launches are quite common. You can see it on the TV, on YouTube, on the internet. This in particular is the launch of the SpaceX Falcon Heavy. What's interesting about SpaceX's rockets created by Elon Musk is not the launch itself. But it's the landing. And I'm sure many of you haven't seen a rocket landing. And it has been a very difficult task to achieve, but SpaceX, this private aerospace company, managed to do it. And they're already working on a Starship that will take humans to Mars very soon. And you realize that all this is not science fiction anymore, but it's science fact, and it's really happening. Now, you might ask, why is landing a rocket very exciting or important? Is we can compare it with taking an airplane. Imagine, let's say, when you're taking an Airbus A380, which costs around $445 million, and you go from, let's say, Dubai to New York, and then you have to destroy the plane and build a completely new plane to come back. You realize that that would be extremely expensive to achieve. Air passenger travel would be quite impossible. And the same is for space. Until now, even until today, going to space usually costs around $80 million per seat. That's because each time they send astronauts to space, they have to build a new rocket. But that's not the case with SpaceX. They're landing their rockets, they're refueling them, and they're sending it back to space. And the more they do that, and the more companies, private companies do this, the cheaper space access we get. And one day, a few decades from now, it will be as if you're taking an airplane and going from one city to another. Now, space development of space transportation systems aren't the only thing that's happening. So you have a lot of companies like Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, SpaceX developing vehicles to send people to space, but you also have companies developing space hotels and these orbital structures to host people to space. So once you have the vehicle, you go to space, and then you actually have a place to stay. And many of these companies will come, are in the development, like Bigelow's units, and the Russians are also working on them. So there are lots of companies that are heavily investing in this sector. And once space becomes more sustainable and cheaper, thanks to companies like SpaceX, we will see more and more of these endeavors. And the next thing you know, for your next birthday, you can ask your parents a nice trip to a space hotel. And finally, what's even more important is the fact that once we have access to space, we will have also access to its unlimited resources. The reasons for a lot of wars here on Earth is also for the lack of resources like water or even oil and petrol or minerals, and nations fighting each other over those resources. And you have also the overpopulation that is affecting it and so on. But the moment we have access to the unlimited resources of space, you can launch a mission and grab an asteroid that might have more gold or platinum than the entire reserves of Earth, or even the colonization of other planets. As you may know, there are a lot of astrophysicists that say that if we don't manage in the next 200 years to go and colonize another planet, and there's a global catastrophe like even a pandemic or even an asteroid hitting Earth, it might wipe out all humanity. So we must go explore and colonize other planets. And SpaceX and likes are already working on such endeavors. And we might be talking about aerospace design and aerospace endeavors here in the Emirates. And you might say, well, why are we doing that here in Dubai? Well, quite recently, as you may know, the first Emirati astronaut Hazal Mansouri was sent to the International Space Station. And this is only the beginning. The Emirates is heavily working and investing in the sector. And in a few days, they are going to launch the first Mars satellite. Not only that, but they're also working on the development of a Mars scientific city, which is basically these biospheres in Dubai that will create Mars-like conditions and train people to be ready to go to Mars in the next 50 to 100 years. So now we know we have a sort of an introduction to what's happening and why it's becoming more and more relevant to have designers in space. The fact that once you have mass public access to space, you will have people that are untrained, that are not astronauts, that will easily gain access to space. So what you need to make sure is that those spaces are human friendly, right? Because these people won't have the training to gain the same training as astronauts, which like spend a huge portion of their lives to train for this extreme environment. And I'm sure some of you may know the International Space Station. And this is basically one of the biggest achievements of humankind. And this is a huge orbital structure. It is as big as a large football field. And it has been up and running and growing up since 1998. And it's orbiting above you 25 times a day. And you have around 6 people that are constantly living in this orbital structure. However, if you take a closer look and we go inside, you realize that it's a bit claustrophobic and cluttered. Notice that everything is occupied. You have ceilings, floors, walls, every single thing is used. The reason for that is when you're designing for space or when you're working in space, you need to have a paradigm shift. That's because when you don't have gravity, everything becomes a wall, everything becomes a floor, everything becomes a ceiling. So designing on Earth the rules for designing on Earth cannot be applied for designing of space. You need to have new ways to do that. And obviously, if any one of you will have access to space and you don't have the training, living in such conditions would be absurd and would be next to impossible. That's why we need more people like designers to make sure that these environments are more hospitable and more human friendly. Moreover, I mean, one of the things that designers usually do is they spend, astronauts usually do in space are they spend most of their time gazing upon Earth and enjoying this nice view. And they're doing this more than 6 hours a day sometimes. And this is their only way out, as in when you put someone in those claustrophobic conditions for, let's say, many months ahead of time, that can create some problems. Imagine if we're going to Mars and you don't have anything outside of the window and you can see pitch black. What would you do then? Again, this is more reason to have designers come up with solutions for these astronauts and these passengers to be sane in those claustrophobic conditions. Now, other than gazing outside the window, astronauts are trying to fill their recreational time by playing around, playing music, or even using onboard instruments as musical instruments. Here, as you can see on the left, they're using a vacuum hose as a sort of air musical instrument. And this is not meant to do that. But when you put people in cramped spaces, they really need to find ways to pass time and to beat one of the biggest enemies of behavior problems, which is monotony and boredom. When you keep doing the same thing over and over again for days and months ahead, and many of you might know that because of the pandemic, we all became sort of astronauts in the past 2 or 3 months, you realize that routine itself could become, as much as it's extremely healthy, it can also become problematic. Now, there are a lot of missions out there that are trying to train people to be ready for such conditions, or to be ready to go to Mars, a mission that will take around 3 years. And this is the Mars 500, where what they did a few years ago, they created a sort of habitat, a Martian habitat, and they put 6 people aboard. And after a few months, the mission was 2 years. After a few months, what happened that these people started to dismantle the base from within, because they needed to redecorate. They were bored, they were tired of what the engineers had already prepared for them, and they wanted to change it, to beat the monotony, the same, let's say, room over and over again. And this was against the will of the engineers. The engineers were saying, don't do that, but they kept doing and destroying the base from within so they could manage to succeed in the mission. Unfortunately, 5 out of the 6 trainees, when they went out, had serious psychological health issues. So you realize that one of the biggest enemies of future human exploration missions is also related to behavioral health. And designers have had some, there have been designers in space, but there were very few and short instances throughout the history. This is Raymond Loewy, the father of industrial design in America. And what happened that when the Americans were creating the first space station, they called Raymond and they said, we need you to design the interiors of the Skylab. This is the first American space station in the 70s. And they said, when you're doing that, you need to make sure you take into consideration the psychophysiological factors of humans and find ways so they could easily survive within these cramped spaces. And what Raymond did was took care of every single detail of the interiors of the spacecraft. Here you can see, for example, the dining quarters of the astronauts. And he said astronauts should eat together like this. This becomes not only a nutritional event, but also a social a point for gathering and sharing thoughts, because in many instances, astronauts tend to distance themselves from each other and they prefer privacy. And this is actually a problem. So he created this special trays where they can not only grab to it, because when you don't have gravity, you're floating around, you grab to it, but it also heats up the food. As you can see, the food containers that are inserted within these trays. So it helps to heat the food. And as you can notice, there's a very nice detail in this picture, the bottles, right? The juice bottles. And there are the zigzag bottles. He actually designed those as well, because when you're in space and you take a bottle and you try to drink from it, you won't be able to do so because you don't have any gravity that makes the liquid fall to your mouth. So you have to squeeze the liquid to your mouth. So you can see he paid attention to all the details. But one of the biggest contributions that Raymond had was the insertion of the window that you can see behind these three astronauts. So when they were designing this spacecraft, the engineers didn't foresee a window. And because, as you realize, when you're sending a large, massive structure to space, and you have the cylinder, any rupture or any, let's say, fissure within the cylinder is a weak point. So when they wanted to create this hole, that would have created a lot of problems for the engineers to bypass. So Raymond fought the engineers, and eventually he won, and they inserted the window. At the end of the Skylab missions, all the astronauts thanked Raymond Loewy for his contribution, because they said if it wasn't for the window, most probably we would have gone mad. So you realize why design is important and why designers are more important today than ever. And as I was saying earlier, when we start exploring our solar system and we get more away from Earth, you realize the sense, the isolation sense that these people will feel, because they are further from their home, but also because when they're looking outside the window, it's pitch black. You have nothing to look at. You may say the stars, but imagine the space between the stars is so huge that most of the time, unless you have special instruments, you won't be able to gaze upon anything. And this is more reason to why we need to find ways to also entertain these people, to make sure they can pass the time without going mad. So we've been talking about structures in orbit, like the International Space Station, Skylab, and so on. What's happening when we're going on another planetary body, such as the moon? As you may know, the moon does not have an atmosphere. It has 1/6 of the gravity of Earth. Also, if you stay there without any protective spacesuit, you will last around 30 seconds, and then it will be a very painful end. So suddenly we're seeing this picture of giraffe. And I would like to ask this question. Let's see who will guess it. What do you think is the structure next to the giraffe that is taller than a tree? Come on. It's an open question. Who can guess it? Go, Sreya.
It's a termite mound.
Oh my God. That's one of the few times that actually someone guessed it. Thank you very much. It's correct. Well done, Sreya. Yes, it is a termite mound, but suddenly we're passing from the moon to the termite mound, and you might say, is this a mistake? Is this slide supposed to be here? Well, the reason to why I'm showing you this image is because we are living in the desert, right? And I personally am at the moment in a skyscraper on the 20th floor. And you have a lot of skyscrapers in the desert, and most of these skyscrapers are man-made. They are made mostly of concrete and glasses, which tend to create more greenhouse gas, more the greenhouse effect. So we need heavy machinery to cool down these skyscrapers. And this is consuming a lot of energy, a lot of material that you need to import, so on and so forth. However, nature has evolved to build its own skyscrapers without using any foreign materials, like these termites. So another question I would ask to Sreya: why do you think the termites are building skyscrapers in the desert? Or anybody else that might know? Come on, guess. Go.
Is it to because when the soil absorbs a lot of heat from the sun, elevation helps cool down the termites?
Oh my God, Sreya, are you an engineer or an architect? That's also true. And it has to do with the cooling system. When you create a chimney, basically inside this termite mound, it's empty. And oh, sorry, apparently I couldn't see some of the answers in the chat window. I don't want to be unjust to some of you, but I cannot see for some reason no, Norazan, I cannot see it. Where is it? Chat. Yeah, chat, here you go. Ant hill. Oh, wow. A rocket? Termite mount,
Yeah,
ant hill.
as well.
Okay, found it, thanks. Protect them from the sun, protect them from predators. Okay, there are a lot of interesting answers here.
Can I answer as well?
Of course, go ahead, Arwa.
Yeah, so in like traditional Emirati house, there's this same concept of where there are openings on the top. So this allows the cold air, which is heavier, to like stay at the bottom in which like they're living, and the hot air to like go out.
To rise. Well done, Arwa. Thank you very much. I'll actually use an image of the Emirati traditional houses next time. Really appreciate your answer. And that's correct. So these termites need to cool down their houses. They're in the middle of the desert. It's super hot. So they create these chimneys. And when you have the circulation of the exchange of hot and cold air, you have the circulation and becomes a natural air conditioner. And even in Emirat or in the desert, people had learned a long time ago how to do that traditionally using local resources without having to use electricity and air conditioning. And not only that, these termites even have evolved to reinforce their nest, their mount on certain parts based on the winds. So if the wind, let's say, is coming from the north, they can reinforce the opposite side. So nature has evolved to create these robust structures without using anything except the materials found on site. So finally, we go back to the moon. And the reason why I was telling you that we have to go back to our old traditions. Instead of when we're going to other, when we're going to explore the moon or Mars, we need to be, we cannot take everything with us, right? So what we need to be doing is using the materials found on site, like the regolith and so on, so we can build with those materials. And this is one of the projects I had worked on when I was in the company Architecture and Vision, where the idea was to send this inflatable base that gets filled by regolith, and you have this hoover that sucks the regolith and pumps it into the dome, this inflatable dome, to protect the astronauts from micrometeorites and radiation, which are one of the, let's say, biggest threats when you are on another planet. And this is, here we can see the renders of this space, and you can see the holes from which you get to fill the regolith. And these are some other projects that I worked on for a while. And most of these projects use materials found on site. And if only we would learn to do the same also here on Earth, instead of creating these glass structures that we have to cool down. What if we revert back to our old ways of constructing and doing things? And this is something you learn when you're learning to design for space. You learn also to use sort of efficient methods to also build here on Earth. Remember that you have zero waste tolerance when you're in space. Imagine today, if you're going to take a cup of coffee to space, it would cost you around $25,000. So there's no waste allowed, and every single thing is extremely valuable. So you have to immediately put it back to use. And if only we could learn from these methods to improve our life conditions here on Earth. A lot of companies are already working and designing bases for the moon or Mars. Here we can see Foster and Partners. Some of you might recognize this name because they have a lot of projects here in Dubai and in the Emirates. And they are already creating the solutions that uses robots and 3D printing systems to build bases on the moon. And suddenly we go back to this image that seems out of place. Who knows what's happening in this image?
Can I answer?
Go for it.
It's a camel.
Okay.
There's a solar panel over it. So the Badus are using solar panel to use energy from it.
Okay, but what's the purpose? Why is this camel carrying solar panels? I mean, the Badus could use the solar panels on the ground.
Can I guess?
Guess, Arwa.
So sometimes in races, in camel races, they have to like a person has to be on the camel to like lead it, but like to make the camel go faster, they use like they have to lessen the weight as much as possible, so they use smaller like robot type things instead of human sitting on it. So this could possibly be like the energy source for that small robot thing that's mounted on top of the
Can I guess?
Okay, one more guess, and then I'll tell you what it is. Go.
I think because the camel's level is a bit higher.
Okay.
And it might be heavy, that's why. To move it
no.
From place to
no.
place.
Okay. There's Janil that's saying it's a solar cooker, a small shelter. No. Well, Janil guessed it, but on the opposite way. Okay, I'll tell you what it is. And this is a difficult one.
Portable energy maker.
Sorry?
Portable energy maker.
It's using the solar energy, but for what purpose? Basically, what this camel is doing, it's trying to save 400 lives in a remote location in the desert. And the way it's trying to do this is by transporting valuable vaccines. And obviously, these vaccines need to be cooled down. So basically, these boxes are fridges to keep the vaccines cool using solar energy. And the reason why they are mounted on a camel is because the camel is one of the most robust animals that can survive in the desert without water for several days. And cars or other means would have more difficulty to go in these remote areas of the desert. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because there are a lot of skeptics out there that they would say, why are we doing this lecture today? I mean, so many people are dying out of pandemics. People are dying from hunger and all this, and we are putting so much money in space. Well, the reason for that is that the more we invest in space, the more we improve our life conditions here on Earth. All the technology that is mounted on this camel comes from space research. The solar panel development also comes from space research. And today, thanks to that, we have access to a lot of new ways to harvest renewable energy. Most of the things that are surrounding us today comes from space, from high density batteries to tech within ambulances that helps people, or even devices that are used in hospitals to save the lives of many people, or the ventilators that you have been seeing recently. NASA was working also on efficient systems that's used on for their astronauts and for their spacesuits, and then they transfer that technology to help people on Earth. So the next time someone tells you that you shouldn't be investing so much money in space, you can give them this as an example, saying that the more we try to invest in space, the more we enrich our knowledge, and we can use that knowledge to improve human life on Earth. So
I have a question.
Yes.
Like you showed us pictures on the domes that are there that we're planning to build on Mars and Moon and all. So I wanted to ask,
yes.
Why is it that these structures are dome shaped? Is there a significance to the shape?
Of course, because domes are self-supporting structures, and you don't need any columns to support the domes, right? And remember that you need to pressurize these structures. You don't have any atmosphere on Mars or on the Moon. So when you pressurize these structures, it would work better. Obviously, if you take a cube, let's say, just to give you an example, let's say you take a cube and you try to inflate it, right? What will happen? The cube will try to become sort of a spherical shape until it ruptures from the edges. So that's also part of the reason to why you have dome-shaped or curvy structures in space. And you have those, or you have also underground systems. But usually everything you build in space has to be, shouldn't have any edges, else when you pressurize it, it will fail. Does it answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, now that we have seen why designers are more important than ever before, and what is the role of design in space, we can slowly start converging on the task of the day, which is playing on Mars. Before understanding why we're playing on Mars, we need to understand a bit about this planet. So Mars is the planet that comes right after Earth. It's the fourth planet in the system. So you have Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. It's half the size of Earth. And depending when you launch a mission to Mars, it could be as close as 38 million kilometers or as far as 401 million kilometers. And this is part of the reason to why they don't launch missions every year or every month to Mars, but they wait for a specific window to open so they can go to Mars. And because these planets are orbiting, right, each other around the sun, you don't go where the planet is, but you go where the planet will be, right? So you wait the right time to launch the rocket, to rendezvous with the planet when it becomes at its closest. And in fact, when we send astronauts to these planets, it will be very difficult to bring them back if there's an emergency. That's why it's a very risky endeavor. Gravity on Mars is 70% less than here on Earth. So if you're 100 kilos on Earth, you will be around 30-ish on Mars. So you can jump higher, or you can build taller structures without worrying too much about gravity. The temperature conditions are quite harsh. In some instances, it might be 20 degrees, but most of the time, the temperatures are below zero, and they average about -60 degrees, which is very similar to what temperatures are in Antarctica here on Earth. And in some cases, especially in polar regions, the temperature is around -120 degrees. There's no oxygen on Mars, or very limited, but you have plenty of CO2, and that's good because you can filter that and extract the oxygen from it. And there's no air pressure. So you need either to pressurize the habitats or the bases you're living in, or you need special spacesuits. And if you don't do that, your blood will boil without the pressure. And that is not a very pleasant thing to observe. This is also from another slide. I won't be showing this, but to also enrich, let's say, what we were discussing earlier about why you have dome-shaped structures on Mars, this can answer your question. And here you can see how, using this shape, you can avoid having any columns. Or look at this. This is a very thin structure. It's like 7 centimeters, this shell structure, and there are no columns. It goes directly down to the ground. So you can create huge structures when you're creating these domes without needing to put columns. Okay, so I will not go into details because we don't have much time about building on Mars.
Sir?
And we go, yes?
I have a question.
Yes, go.
Extremely sorry to interrupt, but how the area or the size of a particular planet is measured?
Sorry, what is measured?
The size of a planet. As you said, that the Mars is 38 million kilometers.
Well, that's something I wouldn't know. You have to ask, let's say, experts or astrologists that they have to do with planets and stars. I can tell you how to build on what to build on the planet itself, but when it comes to planetary mechanics and so on, that is something for experts, how they measure it and what tools they use to understand, let's say, what's the circumference of the planet and so on. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, Ali. So, going back to Mars, the things that you need to consider are, most of the time, so before this coming to playing on Mars, most of the time, most of the activities that these astronauts are doing are it's sleep, hygiene, and restoration for survival. So these are the primary things that you need to be doing when you are on another planet. And if and when you have the time, you can also do the recreation. You can play around, or you also have work. But to survive, you need to be sleeping properly. You need to take care of your hygiene, and above all, obviously, you need to eat. So the challenge for today is you need to design a game that future colonizers of Mars can play with during their free time. And these are what you can choose from. You can design a game during the journey. So design a game to be played in zero gravity environments, for example, in the spaceship during the journey from Earth to Mars. Or you can design, and when you're designing a game during the journey, remember that you don't have any gravity, so you can use that to your advantage. Or you can design a game on Mars. So you have to design a game for reduced gravity and barren environments such as Mars itself. So imagine playing football on Mars when you have the absence of gravity, or imagining new types of games that wouldn't be possible if you were on Earth. So there are no limits to the typology of the game. Some examples could be a physical toy that relies on the environmental conditions that we mentioned earlier, even maybe the heat or the cold, a video game concept that uses VR, a sports game that encourages physical activities, so extreme football, even space stars, and so on. This is another thing that usually when you put humans in environments with reduced gravity, what happens, they start to lose rapidly bone and muscle matter. So they have to keep exercising heavily to be able to recompensate. So whatever encourages them to pass time, to play around, but above all, to maintain their health is welcome. So some of the questions to ask is what type of athletic activities these people have to do, you know? We need to promote the physical and mental aspects, not only physical, also mental. So you're doing games, you're doing puzzles, maybe treasure hunts on Mars. So maintaining muscle capacity, bone density, as well as cardiovascular health, especially during lengthy space travel. What can I do in microgravity? Yeah, maybe space golf. How large is the volume I can play in? So as I said before, when you are inside these domes, let's say, I'm saying domes, but it could be any other type of maybe smaller areas, you need to think of, okay, how much space I have to run around? Because usually, especially in the first missions of humankind to space, will be in cramped spaces, okay? And another thing is, am I inside the base? Am I playing inside the base, or I'm playing outside of the base? Yeah, so I have to wear my spacesuit, and usually spacesuits are extremely, especially now, very heavy and very difficult to move in. So these things are, you should keep them in mind. Can I play soccer on Mars? Okay, everything is welcome. There are no negative answers here. You can try, test everything, and we'll find a way to make it happen. Do I need a spacesuit? How can I use tools and activities out there and transform them into games, right? As we saw earlier in the example of how these people were either using this vacuum hoses or other devices, or they are dismantling the base itself, you know, to entertain themselves. I'm seeing more and more chats, so let me go and check them. Yes, this is also true. Playing more physical activities will be tiring and will require more oxygen, but you don't need to worry about that, because usually that is already taken care of. So you have all these machines that recycle the air, especially when you're on Mars, you can generate oxygen from the CO2. And don't worry about the details. Don't worry about what will hinder you. Just propose a game, and later on we can figure out if that's possible or not. Because if you go too much into details and what will hinder you, then you won't be able to be free to come with some creative solutions. Now it's not the time to put barriers, but just go crazy, you know? So finally, what we're going to do is the following. how much time we have. We have 1 hour and 15 minutes. I would say let's take 45 minutes maximum to come up with ideas. And what once you need to have a vertical, you have to draw it in horizontal. So you can draw it with pencils or colorful markers. Once you finish, take a very clear picture, maybe out in the sun so we can see all the details, and upload it to the link that we will share now in the chat. It's a Google Slides document, you see, like this one here. So put the title. No, maybe you cannot see my screen now. Just let me, where is it? Yeah. So I changed my screen. Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So put the title and then paste your image as large as you can here in the slide. Okay. If you need to add more slides, you can just come here in the new slide and add them. Okay. So that's it. So at 12:30 we stop, and I will go through based on the time we have on the ideas, and I'll comment them. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions, you are free to ask me. I will be here online and I will answer your questions. Okay? Any questions? Good. Go, Arisha.
Like, what do we have to do in that link? In that it's written title and everything.
So when you click in the link, you will go into the Google document. So type the title of your proposal. So if, let's say, you are designing a VR game on Mars, you type the title like VR rockets, or I don't know. So you type it, you have to give a name to your project, and then you paste the image that you take with your smartphone in this slide so we can see it and we can comment it.
No, but like, why are there many boxes in that is written title?
Because every person will use one slide to put their idea. So you have to use only just one slide to put your idea, and you can put anywhere on this page. Okay, so here already people are starting to type their names, their titles, their proposals. Sorry, Dart in Space, a board game on Mars, Olympics in Mars. Okay, a rover race, video game on Mars, and so on. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. So everybody, focus now on the idea itself. So try to generate it, try to brainstorm. Don't jump into conclusions. Use at least 15 minutes. So, or at least 12 o'clock to come up with many ideas. Don't just stick with the first idea that you come up with, right? Have, let's say, at least 5 different ideas, and then pick the one that is more relevant and that you're convinced more of it. If you jump directly to what you have in mind now, then you're limiting yourself. Yes, you have to draw, okay? You have to draw as the drawing I showed you here. I'm sharing my screen again. You see this drawing? Here you can see, for example, I have this space and so on. This is not a game, this is another project, obviously. But there are some colors, there are some titles and so on. So I expect a drawing like this that you do, and then you come back and you paste it here, okay? And obviously you scale it down, and we can discuss about it later. So is the game meant for no gravity, or they can be gravity? So you're designing a game either when you're going to Mars, so during the mission to Mars, and let's suppose there is no gravity, or on Mars itself, where the gravity is 70% less. if you have any questions, I think the best thing would be for you to type them down like this. Everybody can see it as well.
Excuse me, sir. So I think yeah, yes. So basically, what we have to do is name your slide and then draw your design and then paste it on the slide.
Let me just a second. So I'm creating a slide for you that you can use as a reference. Okay, does this answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So we can design on anything that we want, yeah?
Yes. The game can be on anything that you want, as long as the things that you need to keep in mind is how am I entertaining these astronauts? They have around 4 or 5 hours a day to pass time. They can be board games. They can be absence of gravity games. They could be maybe a karaoke that uses the conditions. Remember that you are in space, right? You are, let's say, everybody went through the pandemic, and you remember how it has been, and some of you are still in lockdown, and you know what does it mean to be inside your house every single day, and you wake up over and over to the same things. But apart from the fact that here you're on Earth and you have gravity, you are in space where gravity, the lack of gravity causes a lot of problems. People having trouble sleeping, people isolating themselves because they don't want to see their colleagues anymore, you know, they want some privacy. People getting bored of seeing the same thing, you know, the same light, seeing hearing the same noise, you know. Space is especially spacecraft are extremely noisy extremely noisy environments. I mean, you know that also here in the Emirates, when you are, let's say, inside a room with a loud air conditioner that you can barely hear yourself talk. So that's even worse in space because you have this heavy machinery that is constantly keeping you alive. So keeping that in mind, what can you create? What type of games and entertainment you can create for these people to pass their times? Remember, we are not transferring games from Earth. We are creating games especially for space.
It's personal place. Huh?
Rafi, you have a question in the chat.
Oh, let me check. You don't have internet in space. Thank you, Titakshara. I hope probably I spelled that wrong. I'm sorry. You don't have internet in space. Sorry, I completely forgot to mention that. The longer you distance yourself from Earth, real-time communication becomes impossible. For people to talk, let's say, with other astronauts on Mars, it takes 20 minutes for a message to arrive, right? So I send a message or I send an email and it will take 20 minutes for that message to arrive to Mars. So you don't have real-time communication. And that's another problem, psychological problem, because you won't have the chance to talk with your loved ones in real time. So what do? You know? So you don't see Earth outside your window. You cannot talk with your loved ones in real time. What are you doing? So these are all things that affect people when they're going to be on long interplanetary missions. Warisha, go ahead, type your question like this. I can answer it because sometimes I'm not able to hear you properly.
Yes, but like I opened the link. I opened from the link, but I can't like write the title.
You can't write the title. Let me do this. I'm going to create a slide for you. Just a second. Okay, go to page 31. Is this Warisha?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see I typed on page 31 your name? Can you try to edit that? If you click it, what happens?
Okay.
So you have loud noises, no real-time communication, no Earth outside the window. You're floating around. When you're gonna sleep, you have to strap yourself into a sleeping bag. You have no, usually, especially when you're on Earth, the fact the sunrise or the sunset affects your circadian system, as in it affects your health in different ways. So when the light is constant, especially in artificial environments, that will affect your sleep in so many bad ways. So also creating maybe these environments where light also plays some sort of entertainment or ludic, has a ludic purpose, then that could also be interesting. Remember, the link where you need to upload your ideas is in the chat, in the Zoom chat. You're welcome.
So it has confirming that my access has been denied.
Oh yeah, mine as well. Razan, there seemed to be a problem with the slide.
Let me check.
It is for me to request.
Yeah, it's we're trying to fix that. Thank you. So do we put the drawings, or I think the small description is fine? Yes, of course. You can have a one-line description. Actually, everybody, if you can, other than the title, insert a short description, like a line explaining what the idea is. It would be good. Thank you.
So I have explained 3 to 4 lines on my idea, but then I can't see my slide right now.
It's fine, but it's better if it's one line. So because there will be so many ideas that we won't have much time. So I need to immediately see what.
Yeah, it's very
about,
short.
So I can give you some feedback. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm giving people access. If you request access, you'll be added to the Google Sheet.
But I don't understand why is this happening. It was working properly. So strange. Google cannot authenticate your session. So strange. Any chance you made the link non-public, Razan? So, because if it's public, you shouldn't need access.
I think Google did it on its own. Let me reshare it again. Okay, I'm sending a new link. Hopefully everyone can access now.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Remember that what's more important is the drawing. So work on your drawings. We need to see the ideas visually rather than text blocks, okay? Some of you might have amazing ideas, but if you start writing them down instead of drawing them, we won't have the time to discuss them. So try to, even if you don't know drawing, I mean, don't worry about it. Also put your name. That's a good idea. Okay, now the link seems to be working. We have 26 minutes.
Excuse me, I have a doubt.
Yes?
Like, when you're doing your drawing, like, should you draw the astronauts doing your drawing? Like, should you draw the astronauts?
Not necessarily. You can draw the astronauts, or that's a good question. So you can draw the user that will play the game, but it's not necessary. You know, you can also just visualize the game, or you can just put a figure that represents the astronaut.
Okay, thank you.
If we didn't finish it, can we complete it later? You can complete it later, but we need to see them now so I can talk about them and explain it, because the session will end at 1 o'clock. So by 12:30, it would be good to have all the ideas and we can quickly discuss about them. Warisha still can't. Do you have a Gmail account, Warisha?
Yes, yes.
Try to sign in using your Gmail and then access the link. Maybe that might be the problem. Or anyways, if you can't, just send the file in Zoom. You see in Zoom when you click on file in the chat, send it to us and we'll put it on the link.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Yes?
Is it okay if it's a very, very basic sketch?
Is it okay if you didn't get that? Sorry.
Is it okay if it's like a very, very basic rough sketch?
Yeah, don't worry. Don't worry about it. I'm sure many of you don't sketch often. Whatever helps you explain your idea better. Even if you want to put a reference image from the internet, it's fine. Okay, that can accompany or improve your idea. But I don't want diagrams and just copy pasted images, but rather your own work that we can talk about. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me?
Yes?
How many people should we use? Like, can we use more than one?
You can use as many people as you want. If it's an individual game, you're one person, but if it's a social game where many people need to play with each other, you can represent different people.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Rafi, I think your mic is off.
Oh, sorry. I was saying that whoever is uploading their projects, make sure that you use the remainder of the time to do another iteration where you represent it through drawings rather than text, okay? The less text it has, more likely that we might be able to give you some feedback, okay? Because I will scroll through the ideas and I will comment on the ones that that could contribute to this session.
Hello.
Yeah.
It's not letting me open the website. It's not letting me I'm like the website opens for a second and it goes away.
If you can, Razan, can you send the link again, please?
Yeah, I'll send the link right now. And if you're having issues accessing, you can always request access and I'll approve you as well.
Remember, we won't have the time to read the texts, okay? Sketch an idea. Even if it's a bad sketch, it's fine.
Sir, I have a question.
Go.
Yeah, so
Yes?
my main question is is there proper gravity on Mars?
The gravity on Mars is 70% less. So if you weigh 100 kilos, you would weigh around 30 on Mars.
So you will be floating on Mars also, right?
You don't necessarily float, but it's reduced gravity. So if you jump, you're jumping higher, you know?
Okay.
Or what weighs, let's say, structures or tools that are very heavy on Earth will weigh much less on Mars. I'm going to share my screen to show some of the examples that that are interesting. So you can, wrong screen. Where is it? Yeah. So this by Hind Yunus, it's quite simple, but it gives an idea of what we're talking about, you know? So this is enough for us to have a quick comment about. Even this one, radio on Mars, you know, it's a very quick sketch. But I mean, if you have 12 minutes if you want to improve or edit anything more. Okay, so avoid putting blocks of text because we won't have the time to read them. Put sketches. Also, this is very good. You know, cinema on Mars. This is also quite simple, but why not? Cricket on Mars. Okay, so use the time that you have to improve your drawings. The more rich they are, the better we can understand it. Another thing you need to keep in mind that, especially in early missions, there will be few people, yeah, from 4 to 6 maximum people on board the mission, or even on Mars itself. So keep these things in mind. I'm checking all the slides now while you're uploading them, and once the time is up, we'll go ahead and comment.
So how do you upload it?
Excuse me?
You paste it, okay? If you, or you drag and drop on the page, I think it should work. Or there should be also a button, an upload button for you. Yeah, insert image. So there is this T next to the cursor button, and you upload the image from your computer.
Thank you, sir.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I'm doing this like Google Slides in my computer. So how will I take a picture and upload it?
Do you have the picture on your computer?
No.
Okay. So let me share my screen so you see how to upload the picture. Okay. So to upload the picture from your computer, you just come and click on insert image icon, or even on the menu bar, insert image, and upload from my computer. Okay, then you select the image and you click on open and it will insert the image. Does it answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. We have 4 more minutes.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Can I have a little bit more time, like maybe 10 minutes?
Unfortunately, we can't, because it wouldn't be fair to the other people that finished on time, and I won't be able to review everything, you know.
Okay.
When it's ready, send on in the chat that you're ready to upload, and if we have enough time, then we will upload it and I can comment about it, because I'm reviewing the work now slowly when people are uploading it, so I know how to give you some feedback. Okay, so try.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
So how do I rotate my image?
To rotate the image, you click the image, and then you have this small bar that appears on the top with a circle on it. Hold from there, and it will let you rotate the image.
All right. Thank you. So done.
Okay. 2 more minutes. Actually, 1 minute and 30 seconds. I'm starting to see some interesting works here. Okay, time is up. However, I will give you 3 more minutes to finalize, and then we stop. You won't be able to upload, and I will comment on the works that I'm seeing. I will go through first the ideas that have sketches, and if we have time later on, I can also go through the slides that don't have any images.
Excuse me, there's no slide where I can type and upload my picture.
I added some more slides at the end. Okay, now you have some more empty slides that you can add. Okay. You see
I
them?
don't see any extra slides.
Slides 8 and onwards are empty for you to use.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, time is up. So thank you very much, everybody. Now we're going to use the remainder of our time to discuss the project. Okay, so let's start. I will share my screen so we can see the uploaded
Excuse
project.
me, can you give me a little time? I just need to upload it.
Ishal, you can upload it. We're not looking it until 12:40, okay? And if we still have some time, we'll go over the project as well. But now I will go through the ones that have been already uploaded, okay?
Okay.
So let's start. Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes, no, maybe? Okay, good, thanks. So I'm seeing a lot of similar ideas and a lot of good ideas, and I'm really happy by the amount of people that are contributing. This is, I think, one of the largest individual idea sharing we have ever done in this workshop. So there are a lot of sports ideas and competition where people are competing against each other. You have a lot of virtual reality that's going on, music related ideas. You have multiplayer physical games. You have soccer in space, maze games, more virtual reality. What else? Animal petting in space. That's interesting, actually, because one of the questions is, will you be allowed to have animals on Mars? You never know. Hoverboards, Olympics in space, more physical entertainment and sports, smartphone and VR, home entertainment, movies in space, cricket on Mars. Remember to put the title, yeah? Multi-stadium, video games, turbo cycle, VR and sports games, more VR and sports games, fun coaster, Earth VR simulation, basketball on Mars. Very good, very good. A lot of interesting ideas. So before I jump into each one alone, here are some considerations. Remember that when you're designing for Mars or in space, especially for the early missions, you will have limited amount of materials to build with, limited amount of space to interact in, and limited amount of people. And above all, also, you won't have direct access with Earth, so you won't have internet, so you won't have access to real-time content from Earth, you know, where it's games, movies. So whatever you have, it's actually will be uploaded ahead of time for you to use. And remember, not having real-time communication means to download 100 megabytes of files, it will take so long for the data to be transmitted. And that's why it's most likely that a big chunk or big bulk of the content will be sent with the astronauts ahead of time before they leave Earth, okay? So that's very important. Another thing to keep in mind is competition. As much as it's healthy, it can also create a lot of problems. When you have so many competitive people in space and they're competing, you know, against each other, whether it's in the job or it's in games, it's very possible for this competition also to get out of hand and to become violent, you know, because I mean, I won't know, he won't know, she won't, you know, and it could actually be problematic. So also that's something very delicate to keep in mind. Unfortunately, these are all things that will be explored in the next decades because we haven't had very long time missions on other planets. And when we start them, we're going to learn a lot in the process. So that's also something to keep in mind. So here we can see the people game by Trisha, and you have this. What is it? A smartphone game, Trisha?
So actually, it is a game which helps people to interact. As you know that, as you had only told that people become too personal. They do not want to talk to anyone.
Yeah.
So in this game, there is a chat feature and there is even a friends feature. So there are different tasks in and many levels to complete. So there in the tasks, it will be like you communicate with the community, like there'll be a community of the people who are playing the game, so you communicate with them.
Thank you, Trisha. Okay, thank you, Trisha. Unfortunately, I would really love for all of you to explain your ideas, but we won't have the time. So I'll try to comment as fast as possible. It's a very interesting idea, Trisha, and the fact that you're focusing on people because they will isolate themselves. And such games might definitely work when the base, the Martian base or colony becomes more populated with people. You know, when let's say we have 50 or 100 people, and then we can find these ways to socially network them together. Definitely, that's an interesting idea. And I'm guessing there will be a local internet where people could share and communicate with each other.
Yes.
However, if you have 3 or 4 people, the game might not be as efficient, but definitely for larger groups, it's a very interesting idea.
They even earn fact points, which is like they get to know more facts as they interact with people about the place which they are living in. So like fact, suppose you get 2 fact points, then you earn 2 facts. You get to know something.
Very good, very good. To exchange information, very interesting. Thank you, Trisha. Also, Olympics in Mars. So, like I said, sports activities are fundamental. They are very important. And the idea of having competitive sports on Mars is quite interesting. However, you need to remember that the spaces that we will have will be limited. You know, we won't be able to have a lot of space to go do different types of sports activities. So maybe when the colony again becomes larger in the future and we have different domes, you know, in different places, maybe we could transform those to host, let's say, competitive sports games. Especially again, as the previous project, this is also very good when you have large number of people. I'm not sure, I can't clearly see this, so let me jump. Again, rover race, it's quite interesting, but remember that whatever you send to space is very valuable. And if you have, these are very valuable machinery, as much as it would be interesting to take through the rover and to play with them and compete, you need to remember that if this rover breaks down, it might be problematic for the team, especially if they need to go from one place to another to gather resources. However, if you have a large colony one day and you actually manage to build rovers on Mars, this could definitely be an interesting way to pass time and have fun. I guess these games will be even more crucial when you have small group of people that will be more prone to monotony and boredom rather than to large number of people where they can always find a way to entertain each other. You know, that also means that they have larger spaces to occupy. Spaceball, I've seen this, it's also very interesting. Why don't you use balls to throw in one of these micrometeorite sites? You have a lot of holes, right, in space. This is quite interesting. What you need to keep in mind, Ali, is spacesuits are extremely bulky and difficult to move in, but thanks to people like Elon Musk, and you might have seen the latest mission, they're trying to make these spacesuits less clunky, less heavy, so you can move more freely in them. Also, these spacesuits are pressurized. That's why it reduces your movement. So again, it's quite interesting. What if it's not a ball? You know, what if it has it's an object that is easier to move when you have difficulty of movement? Also, that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. But definitely using the Martian topography to entertain each other is an interesting game. So this is a mix of VR and a physical activity, and I think solutions like this will be quite common to combine not only the VR, because as you know, the virtual reality games, as much as they are very immersive when you put them on, unless you're actually moving or interacting with a physical object, they get to be a bit not very immersive, not very realistic. So the more we can create these devices, especially in small, cramped conditions, the better it is for astronauts, and definitely that will help them not only exercise, but to keep their mental health on proper levels. I like this idea also of the cinema, and throughout history, especially during the world wars or in ships, the cinema or watching movies is very, also in submarines, watching movies or even theater is an extremely fun way of passing the time. And doing that in groups is even better. Maybe you could be preparing some popcorns and all that. But remember that the amount of content that you will have on Mars will be limited, and movies tend to be very, very heavy. So what if instead of watching movies, what if in the future we're creating our own movies? I mean, now you're seeing that there's a lot of AI solutions going on. What if the future movies on Mars are being created by an artificial intelligence supercomputer that that uses a library to create new content? So that could be quite interesting, Sarah. Joomdot. So an AI-driven bot that plays tunes according to your mood, allows you to create music and sing in different levels of acting. This is quite interesting. The reason for this is, especially now, it's becoming more common to have AI monitor the health of astronauts. So lately they sent this small robot. I don't remember the name now. And what this robot does, you can talk to the robot. The robot will look at you, to your face and to the tone of your voice, and will know if you are stressed or if you're feeling happy or sad, and it will try to communicate with you to help you. Playing music based on the way you're feeling or on your mood is very, very an amazing idea that can help astronauts. So Divya, thank you very much. So it's not only you choose the music, but it chooses for you based on how you're feeling. Or maybe it's following you, and if it sees you're sad or you're happy, it tries to accompany you in different ways. So this is quite interesting. So Jampaton, okay, jumping astronauts from one place to another, why not? I mean, if you watch some of the old Apollo moon exploration missions, you'll see how people were jumping, how the astronauts were jumping from one place to another. And at some point, there was a risk that the astronaut jumped so high that he might have actually detached from the moon's gravity, but probably it's a myth. But why not? I mean, why can't we use such activities to play around? Obviously, we always need to keep in mind that spacesuits are very, very heavy and bulky and difficult to move in. But maybe in the future, that won't be the case. Space beer pong. Why not? This is interesting, how you can use the absence of gravity to play Earth games in a different way in space. So also, if these games aren't occupying a lot of space within the space or the colony, even better. Remember that space is very valuable because you don't have a lot of it. So readapting Earth games is a very smart way to tackle the problems. And here we can see this is a multiplayer game. So 2 people playing with each other, why not? And you can maybe rearrange the cups to make the game even more difficult. So quite interesting. Thank you, Hen. We are on Mars. Yeah, we discussed about this earlier. It's quite interesting. It will definitely help people, especially if you tie it with a physical activity. So you have a physical platform where you put the VR and you move around. Find and draw. Again, multiplayer games, quizzes to keep your mental health in place and to exercise, especially if it's multiplayer. Xbox in space, definitely. Paintball in space, why not? But we need to be careful because these are extremely valuable and delicate spacesuits, so you don't want to damage them by shooting people each other. But maybe when they are within the base, they could use the reduced gravity somehow to shoot each other or to play with each other. Board games, again, definitely you can have a lot of board games up there, that's for sure. But the real challenge is how can you really, because at some point by playing board games over and over and over again, at some point you will get bored of that as well. So what if you develop games, even board games, that can adapt or that can evolve or that can change in time throughout its playing period, you know? So maybe each month, the more you play it, the more it develops into something else, you know? And it's always a new challenge rather than the same game that you have to play over and over again.
Sir, perhaps we can make a board game linked with physical activity, like we can be the pieces and the ground can be the board.
Definitely. That's very interesting. So linking always the games to physical activity is very interesting, because to keep these astronauts moving, because the lack of physical activity and the fact that you lose bone and muscle matter is a huge threat. So definitely tying the games is a smart way to tackle the problem. Football ground, like I said earlier, it's very interesting. It's doable. Unfortunately, for early missions, you won't be able to dedicate domes, or you won't be able to construct bases specifically for games alone. But on the longer run, in a future colony, I definitely see these domes that are dedicated only for physical activities, sports activities, or games that can be played in the absence of gravity on Mars. Radio on Mars, this is not very clear. So you have speakers and headphones. Same here, fidget spinners. VR labyrinth game. Also, this is quite interesting. Imagine if you're playing games, multiplayer games with the people on board, but instead of the game taking place physically or in different locations, you actually have a VR maze. So this is quite interesting, because even if you're anchored, let's say, to a physical platform that changed the way which you can walk in and you can explore the spaces with two people and you can see each other in the game, it will definitely help relieve tension. So this is quite interesting. Hamster wheels on Mars. I mean, this. I think I would tie this again to the VR idea of what is it that we can imagine. I mean, maybe on Earth you have this VR platforms that you run on, but what if on Mars you have a different type of physical interaction? What if you are hanging, you know, from space? What if you're in a sphere that moves like this hamster wheel? Definitely, there's something to it, to tie the virtual reality world with your physical interaction. Okay. Sorry. The same again, VR with the platform, definitely. Jetpack games. Yeah, why not? I'm guessing also jetpacks will be used to transport astronauts from one place to another on Mars. And if you're following the news, now they're sending a helicopter to Mars to go from one place to another in much faster time. So what if you can use these tools as games? I mean, if you have the luxury to do so without ruining it, why not? Maybe that could be a good way to play around. iBuddy. This is like the Tamagotchis. This reminds me of the Tamagotchis. And this definitely could be a feasible idea. I'm not sure if you have seen it, but in Japan, in many elderly houses, what they do, they have this robot pets with some fur on it. And it has been shown, it has been proven that even these robotic pets help a lot to calm and to care for this elderly. So I'm guessing having similar robotic companions on Mars, where it might be difficult to have real animals, could definitely help them. I mean, you know, anybody that has a pet, a cat or a dog or a bird, we definitely know that it actually helps you calm down sometimes when you're stressed or when you're in difficult conditions. So having an artificial pet definitely has something into it, and it's a really good idea. Thank you. What else? Hoverboards, again, similar to the jetpack. Why not jumping from one place to another on Mars, using different transportation systems as games as well. VR and 360-degree tools. Remember, when we are presenting the VR games, always try to understand that you have limited amount of space to move in, and how can you tie that to the physical activities of the astronauts as well. Playing on Mars, why not? Again, in the early suits, it will be difficult to skateboard, but definitely there's something to it, how to use the topography of Mars to maybe skateboard. There's a new one, why not? Board games, music on Mars. Usually music and art are one of the useful ways where astronauts pass their time. So they read, they paint, they listen to music. So these things there, they are already doing it. How can we really create new type of games and a way for them to pass time in those difficult conditions will always be interesting. More VR games. You see, when it comes to ideas, the more you have on your sketch and the more you put the information, the better the user understands. And this is very important in design. If you want to communicate an idea, it's very important. And you hit the jackpot if, without having to write anything, you immediately give a perception of what you mean to the person that is viewing your sketch, you know? So always keep that in mind. Basketball, definitely. What if you're playing basketball 1 kilometer away and you have like, maybe you have a VR thing that helps you target and you can actually physically throw the ball. Again, you see, we are matching different games, we're combining different games. And any game that evolves with time, it doesn't stay the same, to break the routine is a good way to tackle monotony and boredom problems. Space tennis, space badminton, if you have enough space to play on. Football on Mars, home entertainment system, definitely. We saw the cinema. Cricket on Mars, definitely. Earth games readapted for Mars. Multi-stadia dome, again, definitely they will, for human colonization, the future colonization projects, I'm definitely sure that some domes or some areas will be dedicated purely to entertainment. So what if you have domes that can simulate, I mean, I see here speakers and sensors, and that's very interesting, and it becomes a sort of a holodeck for whoever watches Star Trek. So what if we project the sky, the Earth sky, on these domes, and we have these speakers that can simulate maybe natural sounds, or and make you feel like home. So that's also very, very important. So you can do this either through the virtual reality goggles or by actually having large spaces that somehow simulate you being on Earth. Another important way and healthy way astronauts like to pass their time on the International Space Station is to take care of their plants. So they have lots of space plants and salads and tomatoes and so on. And when they are taking care of them, this actually also helps them relieve stress. So having greenhouses in the future will be extremely helpful, not only to generate oxygen, but also to generate food, but also help people to pass their time. Space tennis. virtual reality, simulating atmospheric conditions. This is also quite interesting. What if we can simulate trains in these domes that I was telling you about earlier? So you have a lot of interesting ideas that when you combine them, you can come up with some definitely good solutions. Cycle machines. This already exists in the ISS. They have a cycle machine, but it would be good to combine it with VR. So when you're actually cycling, you could be like, you can imagine yourself being on Earth. So that could be interesting. The same here. Here you don't have the goggle, but you have the actual space. So maybe you have a dome, small dome with a cycle, and it would put you in anywhere you want on Earth. Maybe it would also blow some fresh air over you. And you have the different sounds when you are passing from one place to another. That definitely is a good way to cope in those difficult conditions. So this is a valid idea. Different scenarios in VR, of course. Roller coaster, why not? VR, again. Living in a video game. This is also quite interesting because now there's a lot of research of people spending time in virtual games like Second Life. And at some point, they're spending more time in these virtual areas, in virtual rooms rather than in real life. So it is shown that you could be attached to these things. So what if there's a healthy way for you to create sort of a parallel life when you're in these difficult conditions, and you can see different things, maybe recording of your loved ones or different people, different AI people with whom you can interact. There are a lot of also AI therapists that people can use to talk to, and it is shown also that it helps the person cope with a lot of problems. So definitely these virtual worlds could be definitely a good way to cope with those in difficult conditions. So more VR, but here, looking at the sketch, this could be interesting. So not only to experience, to physically move when you have the VR, but what if you can also feel different things, cold, heat, even water, you know? Maybe you're walking in water or in a lake or something, or in a river. What if there's a way to simulate, maybe you're in a pool or something and you can feel different things? That's also one of the major problems in space. Sensory deprivation is when you feel the same thing over and over again, because you're waking up in the same environment every single day with the same light, with the same noise, with the same people. At some point, your senses become numb, you know. So it's very important to find ways to reactivate our senses, whether by physically, you know, or by changing the temperature, changing the texture, even changing the light itself can help people cope with in those difficult conditions. And we have again basketball. What else? What else? What else? Here I had this. I didn't understand this one by Arwa. Is this a VR game, Arwa?
No. Yes, basically it's can I explain?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's a game in which there are like hollow geometric shapes on this like plain body, and they have, each one has two lights, a red one and a green one, and there's a button that randomizes which one, which light each geometric shape has, and there are these pieces that can magnetically attach and like fit into the hollows. And so there are two teams, and then they randomize it, and then each team has to fill in one color, and the team who dims all the lights first wins. And there are also gloves that are magnetic, so they can maneuver around the board. So that's the idea.
Okay, very good, very good, very good. So again, new types of games. Remember, if this game can be played on Earth, yeah, the question you need to ask yourself, how can it be played differently on Mars or in orbit, you know? But what I like about this is the glove itself. So imagine that you're wearing, when you're going to play the games, imagine you wear these special suits that have different sensors and different actuators that could poke around you. Maybe you're playing a shooting game and you can poke around you with bullets, or maybe you go from heat to a cold place and it cools you down, or it warms you out drastically, activating your senses in really immediate ways, as if you're, let's say, on a boat or in the Antarctic regions, and you're going outside the base, or whatever helps you really tackle those senses will definitely improve behavioral health in those difficult conditions. So I'm sorry, not everybody could talk because we have a limited session. Usually we do this workshop over 4 or 5 hours, and in some cases over 2 or 3 days. I'm really happy with all the effort and interesting ideas that you threw in the slides today. So thank you very much. I hope I managed to share my passion about space and enlighten you a bit about the challenges that humankind will be facing when we go exploring us in our solar system, and hope you can join us down the line. We have many more workshops prepared for you, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. It was very amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
This was really informative, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
For
everybody.
giving us
Thank
the
you, sir.
opportunity to spread our imagination. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Really,
Thank you,
it's
sir.
amazing to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The session was really informative, sir. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much.
Sir, which design was your favorite?
That's a good question. I think not one design, but a lot of them had very interesting points that if you combine them, like the VRs and the physical games, and you combine them, you would have really actually quite valid games that could be used by researchers in the future to help astronauts. So down the line, when we do more of these workshops, maybe one day we'll start publishing your work, and we can show the world the amazing things we've been doing here together with your help.
Sir,
Yes.
I'm actually interested to pursue design after this workshop. So can you just tell me what are the courses that are available in Dubai Institute of Design?
Yes. Razan will contact you. Razan, if you can give the details to her, please, and we can explain to you all about our degree, about a Bachelor of Design degree at DIDI.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
so
cool.
send me an email. I'm gonna put my email in the chat box now. Send me an email,
sure.
and we can discuss. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome.
Have a
Thank
nice
you.
day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Very informative.